What's going on, guys? Coach Andre here, back again with another long form video. It's been a little bit of a while since I've dropped a long form video, but we're gonna keep it short and sweet and simple today. We're gonna do an NBA tier list. I'm really excited for the 2025-26 season. It starts in about 2 weeks, so I think right now is a good time to get started. And yeah, we got some interesting shakeups, some interesting moves. And we're gonna go ahead and try to start in order. I'm gonna try to go in chronological. I'm gonna try to go in alphabetical order with the team names, the city more so than the actual team. But I'll try to put them in my list, and we'll reshuffle and we'll kind of take a look as we go along. But we have our S, A, B, C, D, E, F. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So with the first team, we've got the Atlanta Hawks. There we go, Atlanta. So this offseason, Atlanta, they reshuffled the board. They lost in the conference play-in to the Orlando Magic. And I believe they had a double elimination, if I'm not wrong, and they lost both games. So that's pretty tough. But it is what it is. Atlanta retooled. They got Porzingis. They got who else did they get? They got a few guys. They made a few moves in free agency, and I really like the team that they put together for Trae Young. I was not. If this was last year, I was putting them in C tier, no problem. But honestly, they've made some good moves that I'm pretty happy about. With Trae Young, he's kind of in his prime. They got Clint Capella left, Karis LeVert they left, but they got KP, they got Alexander Walker, they got Luke Kennard, and they also drafted some pretty interesting names. They did lose some guys. They lost Larry Nance, but these are players that they can replace or get equal value out of other players in other places. There's a few things to worry about as the season continues. Dyson Daniels and his contract negotiation, and there's other stars. The Hawks aren't, they're not super crazy to extend Young, but that time will eventually come. So, in all honesty, I'm gonna put Atlanta in the B tier. If there was a B plus, I would say B, but I'm putting Atlanta in the B tier mainly because they've made improvements to the roster and they're not as bad as they were. They did something. I feel like F is only if your team stayed completely the same. And there's no upside, there's no bright spot, there's no future picks, there's none of that. So Atlanta, they look good. They have a decent team, and the East is wide open. So they might be a little better than they are. Like on paper, they might be better than they are on paper. But for me, they're still a B tier. They can even easily jump to A, just with how open the East is. But for now, we're gonna keep it at A, and if I change my mind, I'll move them over. So that is Atlanta. Next is Boston, and quite frankly, Boston was kind of playing I don't want to get into tax trouble this year, so I have to put Boston in D tier. I'm putting Boston in D tier not because they suck, not because they're not good, but I'm putting Boston in D tier because obviously Jason Tatum is going to be out for the whole year. Jaylen Brown, it's going to go back to that 2017-18 year where it was just Jaylen Brown by himself. They have some guys, but they've also made a lot of changes to their roster as well. I like to be factual. So with no Jason Tatum, it's obviously going to be rough for them this year. So they lost Al Horford. Al Horford was just kind of just sitting there. He ends up going to Golden State. That was sitting in the works for a month and a half, waiting on pending other things to move. But Al Horford's gone, and so is Luke Kennard. But they also traded Drew Holiday and stuff, and they got Anthony Simons. This was all just to avoid any possible penalties over the second apron. And yeah, Jason Tatum being hurt, it's going to be a year for the Celtics to kind of retool, not rebuild, because they still have winning contention, but they are going to have to retool their team. But I don't know, Boston, I kind of don't see them in C, and they might win more games than we expect, but I really doubt this team is going to make it past a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference just because, their whole team is injured. So let's let's go ahead and monitor them. But I'm putting Boston in D tier. Next, we have Brooklyn, and with the Brooklyn Nets, who are right here, I'm putting them. People have been I've been seeing a lot of hate for Brooklyn on, as I kind of scroll through social media, but I'm putting them in the C tier, mainly because they kind of revamped the whole roster. They have MPJ, and they drafted 5 guys, so this is a fresh young squad, and they're gonna need some time to get used to NBA speed and playing with each other. So I'm gonna put them in C. I'm not super bullish on them, especially because their main young piece, Cam Thomas, he did pick his his qualifying offer up. So he's planning on going into free agency this year. So that team is definitely going to lose a little bit of talent with Cam Thomas. It's obviously not the end-all be-all of that team. There's going to be different, players involved and stuff like that. And there's going to be new guys emerging and, taking the spots and just filling up where they can. But in all honesty, I think Brooklyn is a C-tier team. They're pretty middle of the pack. They could make noise and they could not. But in reality, I think Brooklyn is in a pretty, in like Zen, there's like, I forgot what it was called in like Avatar, The Last Airbender, but there's like position to attack, position to defend, and position to do nothing. And I feel like Brooklyn is in a good spot to do nothing. They have a whole new team. I think the front office should be trying to like tool the team, but not for the players, more for like the organization, just to make sure everything is running smooth and no hiccups. But Brooklyn is, I think, they're middle of the pack, C-tier team. And then we got the Charlotte Hornets, again, just a team that's not really going anywhere. Like, not that, that's obviously not no disrespect to any Charlotte fans or players, but they really didn't, I don't remember them doing too much in free agency. Of course, I'm going to do my research because it's important. We want to be accurate. But Charlotte, they re-signed Trey Mann, and they got Mason Plumlee, and they also got Spencer Dinwiddie. They got Colin Sexton in a trade as well. It's not really, not too much going on. Like, not too many, like. What I will say is that they're definitely in the middle of the pack. They're not. I would say Atlanta could take them, but I don't think that Brooklyn can. So I'm gonna put Charlotte Hornets. I'm gonna put them above Brooklyn, but they're still middle of the pack to me. They might even. I'm only putting Boston in D tier because they're injured. Like, that's the only reason. They would easily be an A tier, S tier team. But we'll put Charlotte ahead of Brooklyn just because they're more seasoned. But yeah, let's go to Chicago. Chicago. Oh man, Chicago's again another middle of the pack team. Like, they've been kind of pedestrian for the last like decade. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's a little difficult to pinpoint where their problems are. Obviously, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, like that duo when it first came out was like, oh my god. But it was, as we've seen, they're not like super like scary, But let's see what they did in free agency. They re-signed Trey Jones, 3-year deal. And this will re-sign Josh Giddey. And I remember Josh Giddey was kind of sitting out for he was sitting out because he wanted the extension really bad. And this year, nobody really moved around in free agency unless they were like fringe or like role players. They didn't really move around too much. So they got Giddey as $100 million deal for 4 years. So now he's kind of there in Chicago now. And they also got Trey Jones, like we mentioned, but nothing really. They have some cap space for next year, and they got some guys they might want to look for. But Chicago, like, for me, some will say C tier, but I think they're in this D tier with Boston. They're not really. They'll make some splashes and it'll have some guys break out, but look to see some of these breakout guys get like teams that are like up in this A and S tier. They're gonna try to grab them because they don't want that. Like, they need them, and they're not trying to have them waste their time on these teams that aren't really going anywhere. So I'm gonna go Chicago in D tier. I just don't see it for them. Something's just not exciting me there. So I'm gonna have to go with D tier for Chicago. Next we have Cleveland. Cleveland is definitely a S tier team. They have a pretty solid roster. They didn't really do too much because they kind of didn't have to. I'm not of like, you kind of play who's in front of you. And they were injured. I mean, they had some injuries to Donovan Mitchell and things like that. But the Cavs, they signed Thomas Bryant. He got a 1-year deal. They traded for Lonzo Ball, and they brought back Larry Nance Jr. Not bad moves at all. For Cleveland, they definitely needed a little bit more depth. Some depth in the forward position would be great, and maybe a little bit more scoring. But other than that, I think Cleveland is a pretty solid team. They're in S tier. Will they stay at the front of S tier? I don't think so, but they're definitely a top tier team. So let's go ahead and jump to the next set of guys. And we got Dallas. Now Dallas, I'm gonna put them. Again, this is another team that I feel like has been getting a little bit of unnecessary hate. I feel like Dallas, obviously they got the first pick in the draft, which was like they beat some crazy odds to do that. And they also got Cooper Flag. You know, they have Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis. They did the whole trade. The whole year for Nico Collins was just a mess. He was like public enemy #1. So let's go ahead. We have Dallas Mavs. So obviously they re-signed Kyrie and Dante Exum. They got D'Angelo Russell, a good backup point guard, especially with Kyrie rehabbing with that ACL tear. They got Cooper Flag, and they also got Caleb Martin. They definitely have a decent squad. They have Anthony Davis. You know, he's always a guy that's going to be in either free agency or trade talks because talent's there, and you know, it's just a lot with Anthony Davis. But Dallas is a decent team. I think they can beat Atlanta, but I think they would have their hands full with a team like Cleveland. So I'm gonna put them in A tier, and we'll just kind of leave it there for now. See how we feel. Let's go. All right. So next is Denver. I think Denver is one of those teams. It was actually interesting. They lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they pushed them to 7. So it kind of felt like that conference semifinals was the actual conference finals. Denver's an S tier team. I think they could beat Cleveland, especially with the moves they did this offseason. They got back Brown. Who else did they? They let go of Russell Westbrook, which, depending on where you sit on that, I mean, they kind of didn't let him go. He said he wanted to leave, and you know, he wanted to test his value against the market. So that's what happened. They traded Michael Porter Jr. and they got Cam Johnson, so they got a player of similar stats on a cheaper deal, something more like easy to, you know, someone that's easier to fit into that offense. Tim Hardaway Jr. They also got, again, Bruce Brown, and they got Valanciunas, which I thought was a big deal because the whole time, this whole Denver Jokic dynasty, the last 5 to 7 years, we'll call it the Mike Malone era. The one thing that we did notice was that Jokic never had a good backup, and I love me some DeAndre Jordan, but he's just not useful if the ball is not in his hand. So he's a very one-dimensional, limited guy, and it's actually good to see they get a good backup for him. And Jonas Valanciunas, he had his own. He was a starting player. Like, he was a first option back when he was with Toronto. So it's interesting to see. I think Denver is a solid squad, and they're definitely S tier. I'm gonna leave them there at S tier for now. I don't think they're gonna fall off S tier. All right, let's go to Detroit, and I'm actually pretty happy for Detroit. Detroit, you know, they've been, since their championship in like the early 2000s, they've been kind of mediocre. They've drafted a bunch of players, especially bigs like Drummond and Monroe, and kind of hasn't capitalized. But they have Cunningham, who, you know, the fans really like him, and he's a good talent. I think they got, what's his name? Duncan Robinson. I think he went over to Detroit. They got Karis LeVert. And they also got, let me see who else they added to the roster. They had Tim Hardaway leave, Malik Beasley. You know, obviously he's dealing with that whole controversy with the gambling, and Dennis Schroeder, he went to the Kings. But in all honesty, I think this team is pretty solid. They got some good vets, some good players, and they're definitely going to be a contender in the. Definitely going to be a contender in the Eastern Conference, especially, added some 3-point shooting. I'm putting them in D tier. I mean in B tier. B as in bacon. Right, Golden State. I'm going to put Golden State. They're a premier team. They're prime time. NBA loves them. Steph Curry's still playing. That Jimmy Butler team was looking good. So I'm going to put them in A. I'm going to put them in A tier. Obviously, we have the Jonathan Kuminga debacle, and then Al Horford sitting around. But Golden State, they were kind of everybody, and when I say everybody, I mean myself. I was kind of wondering what they were going to do, because obviously we all know this is like some of the final years of that dynasty, and we got to just face the music of what it is. Like everything in life has to run its course. So now we have Curry, and they want to capitalize on what they have. I did a video on the Golden State Warriors back in the summertime, just as a cuff, just to see like where like they sat, and most of the things that we spoke about in that video came true. If you definitely check that video out if you have a chance, it's definitely insightful, and it gave a little bit of backstory to what we were going to see in the offseason. And while we're at it, I might as well call to action while we're at it. Like, if you haven't had a chance, please go ahead and drop subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. Definitely helps the channel out a lot, and I read every single comment. I really appreciate all the support and all the love. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. Now, getting back to the Golden State Warriors. So, obviously, the Al Horford thing was sitting in the air. That was in the rumor mills for like at least 6 weeks. And no deal was made. No noise, no nothing, which I think is a testament, because they're keeping things under wraps. They brought back Melton, and they brought back Gary Payton II, and they added Seth Curry. It's actually funny. In one of my shorts where Seth Curry was one of our players of the day, I made a comment where I was like, I wonder if Seth and Steph are going to link up and just play 1 year together. And literally, I would say maybe 2 or 3 days later, they made that come through. And the final part of this whole deal was the whole, drama between Jonathan Kuminga and Steph Curry. And if you're an avid basketball fan watcher, you can see, especially if you have, if you watch enough basketball, Jonathan Kuminga is a great talent. He was a lottery pick back in like 2021 or 2. I don't remember what year, but he was a lottery pick, and he just on the floor, he just didn't really sit too well with Steph Curry. Like I know like a lot of people in the basketball community, they have their go-to channels. Definitely shout out B-Ball Breakdown. On B-Ball Breakdown's take of the whole thing, it was completely interesting to watch, because it was like Jonathan Kuminga it's just his IQ isn't there, and I don't blame him, because it's not like he's a bad basketball player at all. He it's just things that he has to like learn as you get older in the game. So that's about it. The Golden State Warriors are definitely a contending team. They looked great with Jimmy Butler, Curry, Draymond. But Golden State, they like to shake things up, and they like to be like one of the movers and shakers in the league. So especially with teams like Houston and stuff, like building rosters, definitely keep an eye out on them. See if there's any trades that could go down mid-season, because they seem to be fans of that. All right. And next we have the Houston Rockets. I just brought them up. I'm going to have to throw Houston in there. I feel like a lot of people are denying the hype, but I'm going to mainly only off of, hold on. Sorry, I just had to make sure we were recording. We were on the Houston Rockets. Houston Rockets is on, I'm going to put them in S tier. I might even put them on the lowest of S tier, only because they're an elite squad. They have some firepower on that team. They have a lot going on, but Fred VanVleet did also just get hurt. And again, any team with Kevin Durant is like, it's the biggest wild card in the NBA, and it has nothing to do with Kevin Durant. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to kind of say my 2 cents on it. My 2 cents is this: Kevin Durant is an amazing basketball player. He's arguably one of the greatest small forwards of all time. Not even arguably, like he's top. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna say top 25 all time. He had especially when his career is over. With that being said, Kevin Durant, he's good. He's a polarizing guy, not for the reasons people think. I don't think it's his ego or anything like that. I just think he's so passionate about basketball that that's what he focuses on. Now, him playing for the Houston Rockets it's amazing. And he raises the floor of that team astronomically, especially with how they're running up and down the floor. So they have an idea, we have an idea of what they've got going on, but they look amazing on paper. And Fred VanVleet got injured, so they look good on paper. They looked good in the postseason. We haven't seen the full roster in display unless you've been watching the preseason. But besides that, we kind of don't have a rhythm for them yet. But the names on that list, you can't deny they're good. So I'm gonna go with Houston in the S tier. Houston in S tier. Now let's go to Indiana. Indiana, we're gonna have to put them in B tier because they were an S tier team. They literally had a 10 to 12 man roster where everybody on the floor could score. They had a nice young team, but obviously with Halliburton getting hurt, Miles Turner leaving, all that is not good, obviously. So, I mean, like I said, they didn't just lose Miles Turner. They lost him to a division rival. So that's never a good sign. They signed Isaiah Jackson, and they got James Wiseman, a former Golden State Warrior, and Thomas Bryant, and their bigs. They kind of had to replace their bigs. They also had Jay Huff on the team as well, but nothing too crazy with Indiana. And again, Halliburton's still injured, so it might be a slow year. They might still make the play. Again, Eastern Conference is wide open, so they could definitely make the playoffs. But we need to also monitor, that team, and I don't think it's going to be a playoff run like last year. So yeah, I'm putting Indiana in B tier. All right, the Clippers. The Clippers. I would have put them in A tier, but I think with the whole Kawhi Leonard free agency thing, I think it kind of did a lot. They got Bradley Beal, he's a great player. I just don't think he was a great fit on that squad unless he comes off the bench or something. Chris Paul coming back for his final year, that's a good NBA narrative story. Brook Lopez is a great big. John Collins, they added him as well. And then obviously you have James Harden there. But they did lose Norman Powell, who was a big hit. He was having a all-star level play. And he was traded to Miami, a part of that whole that deal, just to kind of create some space. And they're focusing on more of the future. And we have to be honest, so in my original pick, Clippers would be in A tier, especially because Golden State and the Clippers were battling for that playoff spot last year. They definitely in contention with each other. However, I have to drop them slightly, and this is only because in the offseason with the whole Kawhi Leonard and the circumventing the salary cap and stuff like that. So I am going to drop them a tier just because of the controversy, which is, I don't care what anyone says. It might make them play better, it might make them play worse, but this has had a bad effect on the team, and it's going to leave a poor taste in the fans' mouth, in the team's mouth. The NBA has already decided that they're not going to, anything dealing with this is not going to be this year's thing. The Clippers already have the All-Star game, and they already have the All-Star game coming out, and the NBA is like, yo, we already kind of booked it, paid for it, it's already locked in, so we'll let you have it, but at the end of that season, expect fines, suspensions, and disciplinary action from the NBA. All that to say, I'm deducting a tier from them, so they are A tier, but the whole controversy and the whole negative aura over their free agency, I'm going to drop them a tier. Okay, now we got the Lakers. I kind of want to be petty and put them in B tier for LeBron faking his gosh dang retirement, but because it was whatever. It's a ploy. Like, it worked. It was a good marketing campaign. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the Lakers did. And obviously they got DeAndre Ayton, who I'm not really too big on. He's been in the league for like coming on 7-8 years. And then there's a lot behind him, but whatever. They got Jackson Hayes, and he's fine. They also got Marcus Smart and Dorian. They added Marcus Smart, but they lost Dorian Finney-Smith. LeBron. The Lakers have Luka and LeBron, so like they're automatically like A tier. I would deduct them into B tier, but I'm not sure. They really didn't do too much. They got Ayton. They needed a big really bad. And they lost Finney-Smith, but they didn't really do too much. And they weren't the worst team in the NBA, but they're not like it's just hard to like. You see how I'm stuck? Like, I'm stuck for words. That's what the Lakers are. Like, they have some good pieces, but like it just doesn't fall into place. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna put them in B tier. Like, I don't know. It's LeBron. I don't like betting against LeBron, but that roster seems pretty razor thin. And LeBron picking up his option kind of threw a lot of things off, because it was like, if LeBron picked his option, why not trade him? But there's a lot of reasons why not to trade LeBron. One, because he's a good basketball player. And two, there's not a lot of teams that could afford him, and he's not going to no Utah to play basketball. I'm sorry, Utahans. I don't know what y'all call yourselves, but like, come on. From LA to Utah, that kind of seems a little strange. But anyway, I'm gonna leave Lakers in B tier. Luka, LeBron is great, but to say Golden State is better than them, nah, I can't do that. I'm gonna put them in A, but they're a low A. I think that's fair. For 25-26, I'm putting them in a low A. They're good. They could make the playoffs if something goes around, but I'm gonna go with this for now. Let's see who else we have. All right, next is Memphis, and I don't know how I feel about Memphis. I really don't feel like they did anything over the offseason. Like usually I don't think Ja Morant was under contract or anything. They extended Jaren Jackson Jr. They also got Ty Jerome. But they did lose Desmond Bane to Orlando. Memphis got 4 draft picks, which I thought was a pretty good haul. Orlando's betting that they're going to be good for the next 4 to 5 years. Looking at their roster and the whole 2-apron and the way the Celtics and Knicks are, like, they're not going to sustain having rosters of that much spend. So, it kind of makes sense. So I think Memphis kind of did well with picking up that trade. I think Orlando might have overpaid for Desmond Bane. That's just my opinion. Other people see otherwise. Not really too much going on in Memphis. Again, a lot of players in this year kind of stayed put. Like, the NBA, the way it's kind of lined up, it wasn't really aligned for people to just be jumping to free agency. It wasn't 2015 all over again. But yeah, nothing really too notable with Memphis, and I wasn't really too bullish on them anyway. And then breaking news: Ja Morant he has an ankle injury right before the season starts, so he's gonna be missing a few games, or he might be day to day. It's just a lot of uncertainty with that team. I'm gonna put them in C tier. They're definitely better than these two teams, but they're not better than the teams above them. So that's just the harsh reality of what's going on. Next, we got Miami, and again, Miami is like, I'm gonna put them in C tier. Miami's cool and all, but they had the whole Jimmy Butler debacle last season, which you got to look at it from both angles. If you were Pat Riley and Jimmy Butler is getting older, like, does it make sense, like, on a business level to re-sign him? And if you're Jimmy Butler, if you take your team to the finals and you have a case that you should be paid, you should be paid. Like, so we kind of see how it's stalemated. You see where the two ideologies kind of clash, and Pat Riley ultimately said, like, this is my team, so he traded him. They signed Precious Achiuwa, and they re-signed Davion Mitchell, and they also got Norman Powell. So they upgraded their roster really, really well. They got some other guys, some other young players, some young rookie talents. They made some moves to the roster. So intuitively, I kind of want to move them up from C to B because they did change their roster up quite significantly. But they're B, but I don't think they're better than these teams, or like they don't have a better projection than these teams in the B tier. So I'm gonna put them at the back of B tier. But yeah, shout out Miami. Next, we got Milwaukee, and I might have to put them kind of close to B tier. I'm gonna put them in B tier because the roster didn't really change too much. They signed Miles Turner, which was fine. And actually, second thought, I'm sorry, we're moving the Bucks down to C tier. I just remembered they waived. So the Bucks just did a lot. Like, they waived Damian Lillard, so they're paying him off the books. That's cap. That's already locked away. And then they waived him, which he was on a crazy deal, for him to go back to Portland. So that was kind of like, all right. So they lose Damian Lillard. He wasn't gonna play anyway. Then you have Miles Turner. They get him. They just signed him after that loss to Indiana, and I don't think it was because Miles Turner didn't want to go back to Indiana. It was just he was the longest tenured guy there. They were gonna have to pay him, and there was no money to pay him, especially if Halliburton wasn't gonna play next year. So they could have gave him to the Bucks. Hopefully, they could probably hope his value drops a little bit and they could go get him again. But they're not doing that. And they also signed Coffee, the 3-and-D guy. So it's not too bad. The Damian Lillard situation kind of derailed a lot of stuff, especially like with the whole contract and cap space stuff. So they don't have a lot of financial freedom to do much, and they're really trying to keep Giannis happy. But reports are going out that he's telling the team like, yo, if things go south, I want to go to these 3 to 5 teams. And so his agent's preparing for a doomsday in case of anything, but they're not really doing too much, and I don't think they're going to make too much noise. I think Giannis will have a great year. They might even throw him the MVP, but he's not going to – I don't think they're going to go too far. But yeah, that's the Milwaukee Bucks. And we got Minnesota. Now, Minnesota's a great team. They're pretty fun to watch. And again, they were a team that was above a lot of above the salary cap and stuff like that, but they're not gonna really make too many moves. They re-signed Naz Reid. He's a solid, player. They re-signed Julius Randle to a decent deal. I wouldn't be surprised if Julius Randle was moved like by either this year's deadline or next year's deadline. They brought back Bones Highland, and they also signed Johnny Juzang, if I'm saying that right. And they did lose Alexander Walker, who was a solid talent for them. But ultimately, I think Milwaukee. I think Minnesota is one of those A-tier teams. I think they're a team to pay attention to, and if things shake out the right way and the matchup, and they're on the right side of these brackets and injury and stuff, they have a chance to be real title contenders. Real title contenders. New Orleans is, they're still trying to figure it out. I feel like they've been an organization that's been mismanaged for a while. They've got some good draft picks, and they've developed good talent. They brought good talent to the NBA. But they got Jordan Poole, which is cool. So it was cool to see that. They signed Jordan Poole, and they got Sadiq Bey. And also got Kevon Looney, which is great. So they got some, a veteran big in there. They lost CJ McCollum. They lost Kelly Olynyk. But I don't think that's anything that they're too nervous about. And then they signed Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. So they did some drafting, and they also got some players from other teams. So they have a whole new team. I'm going to put them in C tier. They should be fun to watch. I'm gonna put them in the middle just because I think they're somewhere in the middle of the pack here, and they're trying to find their identity, especially on offense. So it'll be fine. But New Orleans is a C-tier team to me. We got the Knicks, and I'm sorry, I have to put them in S. I'm sorry, I have to put them in S. I won't put them. I'll put them over Cleveland. Yeah, put them in front. Let's go Knicks. The Knicks, they had a pretty interesting offseason. They did most of their quote-unquote strategy. They did most of their moves during the beginning of the free agency. They signed Jordan Clarkson. We did a video on the Knicks, and we were able to predict Jordan Clarkson getting signed with the New York Knicks. It just made sense. It just was the right move. They also got Malcolm Brogdon and Ubaseli as well. They lost Precious Achiuwa, but they definitely were able to. I think their bench did get better. And then moving forward, it's a lot to think about. But in the 25-26 season, the Knicks look great, and they're like one of the favorites coming out of the Eastern Conference. So Knicks got to go in S tier. Next is OKC, and OKC has to go in S tier as well. OKC, they had SGA had one of a my player kind of year, winning MVP and then also winning the Finals MVP. He just had a great year. He got a massive extension. And this team is going to be good for the next 3 to 4 years, 3 to 5 year window. They're going to be contenders as long as no one gets hurt. A lot of their moves was kind of them. They did draft some players. They re-signed Jalen Williams, AJ Mitchell. They retained the core, honestly. They brought in some guys. Thomas Sober, they got right out of the lottery. They got a pick, and they got a few guys. They gave, like I said, SGA. They gave him a super extension. They locked him in. They're like, this team is the team that we're gonna go with. So they're fan favorites. They're a good team to watch. And I'm really excited to see how they evolve and get better as players and as a team. So OKC is an easy S tier pick. Then we got Orlando. Orlando's pretty good, but I would put them. If there was a thing between A and B, I would. But let's really think about this. Orlando, I don't even. So they got Desmond Baines, like we talked about, and they also signed Tyus Jones, his veteran backup guard, and they brought back Mo Wagner. They extended Banchero, and they also drafted. They had two picks in the draft this year, so it's a nice young team, and they're just slowly building that roster up. They lost Cole Anthony, and they lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Obviously, when they sent them over for Baines. But this team they're fun to watch, and I think they have room to grow. I want to put them in B, but I want to put them in A. But I'm gonna put them in B. I think they're a pretty solid squad. I'm gonna put them in B tier. Next is the 76ers. 76ers, they have a lot going on. Joel Embiid, he's trying to piece together another season, and there's just a lot of mismanagement there as well. They re-signed Quentin Grimes, and they also re-signed Kyle Lowry, but they did lose Ubaseli to the Knicks, which we spoke about a little bit earlier. And they also re-signed Justin Edwards. It's just not really too many moves. This roster is still a lot to be desired. And with the Eastern Conference being open, they're gonna win some games, but I'm not really sold on Philly. They would be a very, very bottom tier B team, or it's like a C tier team. In all honesty, they're okay, but the whole Joel Embiid era is over, and I think the front office should kind of start pivoting away from that. It's just not working. They already got rid of the coach, and Ben Simmons and this. It's just, sometimes you gotta just pull the plug and just know when to start over. And I think Philly's in that kind of situation right now. It's been a while. And now we have Phoenix. Phoenix is, Phoenix is not looking good. So they obviously lost Kevin Durant in free agency. They have Devin Booker. So they gave Devin Booker an extension. They bought out Bradley Beal. Cody Martin was waived. So the Phoenix is really trying. The roster was top heavy for the last 5 years. The top 3 guys on the team were making 90% of the salary for the team. So it was they had to fix that. They were in financial limbo. They had no direction. It was kind of hard to watch. And this is a personal thing. Their arena is kind of ugly. So if the team sucks and then the arena isn't aesthetically pleasing to watch, it's just a mixture of it wasn't fun to watch. The Phoenix Suns were I'm kind of contemplated to put them in E or F just because their whole roster was just a shit show, and they're kind of trying to save face now and blow the whole thing up. So I kind of want to. They're definitely not better, even injured. I'm not a fan of this team. The Phoenix Suns have a lot of work to do. They have to decide if Devin Booker is really where they want to go. Somebody made a great point, and I've always felt this way, especially about that game in particular. But that 70-point game where they lost and stuff, it was it's kind of that organization, even not finding anybody or not suspending players. I just think it was kind of it was sorry, losing by dropping 70 and losing is not the name of the game. So it's just that's just the mentality of the organization just seems a little strange. I'm gonna have to put them in E. I'm not a fan of the Phoenix Suns. They kind of have a lot of work to do. They're definitely not F, but they're not good. Who else do we have? We have the Portland Trail Blazers, and they look fine. They made some good moves. Let's go ahead, obviously, and talk about it. All right, so the Trailblazers got, obviously we spoke about this earlier with the Celtics, but the Trailblazers got Drew Holiday when they sent over Simons. They got Damian Lillard, which was kind of more of a legacy, this is the last hurrah, and they waived DeAndre Ayton after he got traded there. They also re-signed Doug McDermott. That's a throwback name to the 2010s basketball. And a lot of guys left, they also left in free agency as well. So they signed Eubanks, they re-signed McDermott, like we said, and they got Drew Holiday. So they're not. Portland has always been a team that's they're young and still trying to figure it out. So I'm gonna put them in. I'm gonna put them in S and C, just because they're fun to watch, but they're not anything crazy special. Sacramento, Sacramento Kings, man. Why? They were looking so great in the 2020s. They looked so good, but they kind of fell off of a cliff. Let's see the news that they did in free agency. They really wanted Jonathan Kuminga, but that ultimately didn't work out. They were thinking about Westbrook, but I don't think they're gonna. They called him. They gave him a call, and they got Dennis Schroeder. They didn't re-sign Fultz or McCollum. Yeah, no, CJ McCollum already left, so it doesn't matter. That's not correct. I'm gonna have to put. I think if we had a team that's in, I'm gonna put the Kings in F, just because it's Phoenix. At least Phoenix was trying to make a move. They wanted Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker on paper. That sounds great. The Sacramento Kings looked at the Chicago Bulls roster. They looked at them for the last 3 years, saw that they weren't going anywhere, and took on the same exact team. That is insanity to me. And then you fire Mike Brown because he's having a good year, and then you fire him. He had a good season, coach of the year, and then you fire him. It's like, damn, like the leash was short. So I think it's a GM organization thing. Like, I think whoever's at the helm of the organization either doesn't know anything about basketball, or they're just trying to do like financially what they think they should do. And this team has been like one of the worst sports organizations in professional sports the last 25 years. They've made the playoffs maybe twice in the last quarter century. So that's not on. You're not that bad on accident. So Sacramento, there's something going on in the front office. And then once they get some bright spot, that guy's always gone. It's always strange. All right, we got San Antonio. I'm putting San Antonio in S tier, man. I don't care. They could be in the back. That team is fun to watch. They got, just like the Oklahoma City Thunder, they've drafted well. They got some good talent. It was sad to see Greg Popovich retire, but he kind of built that team and put the legacy in them. So this is a new Sacramento team, and it's fun to watch because Victor Wembanyama looks great. Like, he looks amazing, and we're really excited to see what he's gonna do. The Spurs got Kelly Olynyk, which was cool. Good veteran forward. Obviously they have Stephon Castle. They have all these young talents. And they also lost a few guys too. But obviously, maybe S might be a little generous. But let's put San Antonio in A. They're definitely better than the Lakers. San Antonio looks great. They're a fun team to watch. Young talent. And it's gonna be great. We're just super excited to see what they do. But yeah, San Antonio's they're great. They shut down Wembanyama early due to the thrombosis, I forgot, but it's a medical condition, and it's good that they're paying attention and they're looking out for his health rather than caring about money and all that. Whatever, it doesn't matter. San Antonio looks great, A tier. I think that's all she wrote. Toronto's kind of, I wouldn't say they're better than these teams, but they're not as bad as Chicago, and we could put them in D tier. But I feel like they might have some upside, so I put them into C tier just because of the upside. Let's see what's going on in free agency with the Raptors. Not really too much going on. Not really too much going on. So I'm kind of contemplating to drop them back. Got Garrett Temple, but not Brandon Ingram. He's still on the team. They also got Mamu Kelasvili. Again, it's just a good big, on a friendly deal. They also wanted Giannis and all that, but that didn't work out. So Toronto, in all honesty, I'm going to throw Toronto in C tier in the very back. They're like in the middle of the pack. Not really. They could have I don't see them really making a lot of noise, but the Eastern Conference is open, so it's just they're kind of like whatever. Not really too much going on. We got Utah, and Utah again is similar to the Raptors. Like, they made some moves, but not enough to really make them like contending teams. They got rid of Collins because obviously he was due for a contract. They also signed Mo Bamba, which is cool. They also got Yusuf Nurkic, Kevin Love, who I believe just retired, Kyle Anderson, the 3-team trade, and they did that for Colin Sexton. And they're kind of revamping the team. So Utah, like, you could put Utah, but if Utah, I'm going to put Utah and Toronto down here, just because they're not really in contention like that. Not really seeing it. And we have the last team in the NBA, the Washington Wizards. How do I feel about the Washington Wizards? Again, they're a team that they draft well and they bring in some great guys, but I think they're mismanaged. They signed Marvin Bagley III. They also got Trey Johnson, Cam Whitmore. And then they had McCollum, but they lost him to the Hornets. Not McCollum. Was that Dinwiddie? No, CJ McCollum did get traded. That's how Poole got over to Washington. To New Orleans. So they kind of retooling the roster. They're taking on some old contracts just to empty up some space so that when it's time they could sign if whoever wants to go. They really wanted Ace Bailey in the draft, but he didn't end up going to Washington. He ended up going to Utah. That was about Utah. They also got Ace Bailey, but we'll talk about that later. Washington is okay. They're nothing too noteworthy. I think they belong in D tier just along with these other teams. I think this is a pretty solid tier list. Knicks, OKC, Denver, Cleveland, Houston. You could definitely swap out some of those A and S teams if your heart desires, but I think those are the top 10 teams in the NBA. The Eastern Conference kind of sucks this year because a lot of teams are injured. It looks like a lot of Western teams, but yeah, I think this is pretty solid. I think this is pretty solid. I put Phoenix in E just because I just think the Kings are in no man's land. I think Phoenix, they at least have a direction, but I just can't see it. I just can't see it. But let me know what you guys think below. This is my tier list. This is all obviously subjective. I obviously should have started with that. This is just my humble opinion, but I think this is a pretty solid team, a pretty solid tier list. So you got some teams that are worse than some, runner in the packs, teams to keep your eyes on, and the teams that are gonna push for final contention. Some people might even feel like Minnesota should be up in S and Houston should be in A, which is a fair argument. I would say they're interchangeable. But I'm gonna keep this list like this. I'm just for now. I want to know what you guys think, man. Be sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I definitely want to know what your opinion is. What do you think? Where do you think these teams belong, man? I'm your host, Coach Andre, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out, ciao. I'll see you later. Thanks for checking out the tier list. Peace out.